Captain Midnight.
So, the teaser for Spider-Man Noir dropped recently, and even though I don't cover TV dramas too often lately, especially ones that haven't even come out yet, I felt compelled to talk about it. Because, man, this is a weird one. For years, Sony's approach to using the Spider-Man IP outside of their Tom Holland-led collaborations with Disney have been simple. Deeply strange, but simple. Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man. They centered the Spidey villains, but for the most part de-emphasized the villainy as much as humanly possible, leading to very wishy-washy, bland premises, before we even get to just how oddly constructed those movies are. Now though, Sony seems to have remembered that, wait, there's a lot of Spider-Men, we can just use one of them, giving us Nicolas Cage in Prime Video's Spider-Noir. Probably the weirdest comic book adaptation that'll come out this year, and one with a teaser that left me cautiously optimistic. I'm going to break that down a little bit, but this is one I really want to hear from you on. I want to know how much interest there is in coverage of Spider-Noir. What did you think of the teaser? Are you going to watch it? Let me know down below, I'll be reading all of them. So there is some previous comic book material to discuss here, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's clear from the jump that Spider-Noir is aiming to adapt the flavor and tone more than the story itself. The biggest change to the source material, of course, is the fact that Peter Parker will not be making a trip back to the 1930s for this one. The showrunner has said that Peter Parker is synonymous with a high school kid, which, if I was to nitpick a little bit here, feels wildly untrue. Peter has spent a minuscule amount of his time in comics in high school, and there's even plenty of movies where he's not in it. My guess is this is a case of Sony wanting to create some distance between this show and Brand New Day, releasing a few months later, and maybe not wanting to confuse general audiences. But I don't know, it's a weird move considering Phil Lord and Christopher Miller are producing, and Cage has already played a version of this character as Peter in their animated movies. But Lord has also come out and said the character is called Ben Reilly for a very good reason here. Are we going to get some bizarre 1930s cloning going on? I doubt it, but who knows. Now, the change doesn't bother me too much. It does make it seem more unlikely that we'll ever get a faithful solo version of Ben Reilly on the big or small screen. I mean, he was basically a punchline in Spider-Verse, and now he's a completely different character here, but I'm not really sure that was in the cards anyway. Other than bringing back classic writers to do some comic work every once in a while, Ben doesn't get much love from Marvel these days. But as long as this version of the character doesn't overshadow his comic book counterpart to the point where he's basically rewritten to align with him in the books, I don't mind them using the name too much. But let's move beyond that and discuss Nick Cage himself. Speaking about his approach to the character, he's talked about how he aimed for 70% Humphrey Bogart and 30% Bugs Bunny. You combine that with how strange he is in the trailer, clearly not having full control of his powers, at least emotionally, and I think it's clear that the show is going to lean into Cage's love of going big and bombastic, at least to a certain extent. I suspect that this will be a huge turnoff for some. When used well, Cage can be an incredible actor. When used poorly, well, I still find him to be a lot of fun, but I get why others would think he's really grating. Especially after all these years, when you feel like you've seen that bag of tricks before. I will say though, if there's one danger these 8-hour streaming shows can have a hard time avoiding, it's feeling like an overlong movie stretched beyond their breaking points. And that can get very boring very quickly. Cage giving a Bogart/Bugs Bunny performance should, I'd hope, help Spider-Noir avoid that fate. Now, it does have to be acknowledged, Nicolas Cage is 62 years old. That's an advanced age to get spider powers, and I've seen some people say he's too old for the role. I don't know, man. Contemporary Hollywood 62 passes just fine as like 1930s 40-something hard-boiled detective to me. It's not like Bogart, at the height of his popularity, looked like some young heartthrob. I think it's fine. He's got plenty of physicality in the teaser, and if the action sequences do become too unconvincing, this is a character in a mask where a stunt double could be used extensively. It kind of seems like a non-issue. What I find more interesting is what they're going to do with the fact that he's older. They've already talked about how this Ben is disillusioned and cynical. Everyone involved in the show has been hinting at a darker, tragic backstory in interviews, including Cage himself, which makes me think that's going to play a massive role in the season. And I want to be excited about this. If you're going to have a much older Spider-Man, you may as well lean into that and establish him as someone who has really lived a life and had some defining experiences before he ever touched the mask. I think that's a good instinct, and it makes me believe there may be more to this character than just counting on what if Nick Cage was a hard-boiled PI Spider-Man 8 years after we already saw that in Into the Spider-Verse. But of course, he's not Spider-Man here, is he? Apparently he's going by The Spider, as an ode to old pulp heroes from the time. That really got me thinking about the early 90s, when ancient Hollywood execs, seeing the success of Tim Burton's Batman, rushed to greenlight movies about characters from their childhood, like the Shadow and the Phantom, not understanding the massive difference between them and the DC and Marvel characters who had had decades of sustained stories since. Those 90s movies were not great, but I do have a soft spot for characters like that. And it occurred to me that these days, getting a big budget film or show made about that kind of pulp hero would be almost impossible. So if the best way to do it now is to smuggle it through the Spider-Man brands, I'm not opposed to it. Still, with the lighter, jokier tone of the teaser, I'm a little afraid we won't get enough of that hard-boiled attitude that the show is clearly trying to call back to. Speaking of, I have to address the way this is getting released, with both a black and white and color true hue version. That's a really novel idea. Of course, there have been things like the Godzilla minus color and Logan black and white releases, or Ghost of Tsushima's Kurosawa mode, that have done this kind of thing in movies and games. But I can't think of a time it was ever done on TV, and definitely not placed front and center like this. And I would actually love to see more mainstream shows embrace black and white photography if they feel like the material is suited for it, so I do like the concept. Now, I've seen people answering which version they're going to watch, and most seem to be landing on the black and white version. Now, this is where I might sound like an obnoxious snob, but I'm a little more torn. For one thing, I think the color version actually looks a lot more vibrant than I was expecting. The teaser does a solid job of separating it from the usual kind of dull streaming show look. And the black and whites, while it doesn't look bad, I will say I don't think it actually captures the photography and feel of The Big Sleep or The Maltese Falcon, or any of those 40s noirs. It's too clearly digitally shot and effects-filled for that. I understand that shooting on film would just not be feasible for a streaming show. Even the biggest directors can barely get away with it these days. But because of that, it ends up a lot closer to Sin City than an actual Bogart movie. Now, I like Sin City, it's not like it's the end of the world, but it doesn't scream authentic old noir to me like it seems to for others. I'll probably try the first episode in both styles and see which one I end up preferring. The first episode is actually going to MGM Plus early, with the whole series releasing on Prime a little bit later, and as one of the few sickos that actually subscribes to MGM Plus, I guess I'll have plenty of time to decide. As for the comics, I get the feeling that they're using them as a springboard more than anything else, which, tends to be how these things go. I'm fine with that here. I remember being massively excited for Spider-Man Noir when it launched in 2009, and then being kind of disappointed by how it felt more like a fun concept with a few good ideas, more than anything that really blew me away when it actually came out. Now, I do remember the second run being pretty strong, so I wouldn't be surprised to see fans of it be a little disappointed by the show clearly going in a different direction. Hopefully, it's good enough to justify that. Honestly, even though this was announced years ago now, Spider-Noir was just not a show I thought would actually see the light of day. Sony was throwing everything at the wall a few years ago. The Bad Bunny wrestler movie, Olivia Wilde's Spider-Woman, just endless announcements that would stall out fast. Spider-Noir, by the nature of how weird it is, seemed destined for that kind of treatment. But here we are, with a show that actually exists. And I really hope that Sony's TV division has a better handle on this Spider-Man stuff than their movie studio does. At the end of the day with Spider-Noir, it's such a strange concept that I really have no idea if it'll work, at least on TV. Still, there are enough promising elements here that I want to be positive. This teaser feels absolutely nothing like the previous output from Sony when it comes to extending the Spider-Man brand, and that's what I wanted to see the most here. I think the teaser accomplishes that and promises something that I'm definitely intrigued by, even if I'm still baffled it exists at all. was also great to see some real web swinging in this, going outside instead of being confined to sets. I know it's hard to believe, but sometimes when I'm not watching movies or TV, I do actually go outside, and that's when it hits me how much we take it for granted. I kinda have a vested interest in outside being, thriving and livable. But it turns out, liking nature and saving nature are two different skill sets. But what could you or I do about it? The answer for me was finding a way to turn my individual action into something bigger, which is exactly why I joined Planet Wild. Planet Wild is crowdfunding for nature. Every month, their community of around 20,000 members pools their contributions to fund a carefully selected rewilding mission somewhere in the world. Whether that's bringing back endangered species, restoring forests, or cleaning plastic out of the ocean. The part that really appealed to me is that they document everything. Every mission gets a full video report on YouTube so we can see exactly where our money went and what it did within 30 days. It's not some vague promise, you really get to see it. One of their recent missions restored a forest without planting a single tree. It was impactful, but it was also really interesting to learn about. If you want to join, you can give whatever amount feels right to you. There's no set price. The first 100 people who sign up with my code MIDNIGHT2 get their first month completely free, covered by me. Just click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. You'll see your impact within 30 days and you can cancel anytime. And if you want to see them in action first, check out their mission restoring a forest without planting trees right here.